It is morning where I am, and the Canadian wildfire smoke has finally made its way down here. And it looks really weird outside. The sun is out, so it's kind of hard to tell at this present moment, but I was just out in the front of my house a little while ago and it looked very smoggy. And the last time there were wildfires in Canada, it made its way down to my area, and here we are again. That was just a couple of years ago. Anyway, these last 2 weeks for me have been pretty emotionally draining, and I wanted to record this message because maybe this is a collective feeling. I'm not exactly sure. I also had therapy this week, which was a little weird. My session this week was a little weird just because I kind of felt like my emotions were all over the place. I was feeling very tender and really vulnerable, which, is the case for many of my therapy sessions, but I couldn't really explain why I felt so emotional outside of like hormones and things like that. But one of the ways that I described how I'd been feeling to my therapist was this sense of and acceptance, exhaustion too, but acceptance of the realities that are in front of me. And I am a person that's big on manifestation, calling the things in, seeing the things in your mind first before you see them in your physical reality. But there is the current reality that I live in this world, and a lot of the things that are happening around me have been so negative and have been so emotionally draining, and I have not done a good job myself over the last like couple of weeks to a month, honestly, of detaching and of ignoring what is happening, because things are happening. News, current events are happening at such a rate that it is just unrealistic for any one human to be taking in so much bad news all at once. And then you go outside in the world, it's like literally burning. Like, how many wildfires have we had in the last decade? So where I've normally been able to stay in my hermit bubble and create this peaceful oasis that I live in, like, this is one of the spaces that I come to like really ground myself and recenter. I've been having trouble doing that recently, and I've been spending a lot more time than I normally would on social media. And some of the things that I've been looking at, when you look at something once on social media, your algorithm turns into that thing. And I have found myself consuming way more true crime than I feel comfortable with. I am not a true crime buff at all. True crime is one of the most horrific genres of media for me to consume because it is literally true crime, and that is just not something that I like to have in my psyche. And I don't want to walk the world paranoid about everything when I'm already kind of a, scary person, and have to really fight to feel safe enough in my body to go out and be in the world. So I've just been feeling incredibly overwhelmed. I think given the state of race relations where I am and in the world, but specifically where I am, I also have just felt a bit safe and also unsafe. Unsafe as a whole, but safe in my immediate vicinity. And I think that's given me a bit more appreciation for the the place I call home now, because there are a lot of successful people who look like me, although many of them have fallen on hard times as a result of this like current economic crisis we're in. But generally speaking, I do feel that this is a safe place for me and for people who look like me. And so I think I've finally accepted that. And I have had so much anxiety around like where I belong in the world. And even in that, I've started reading, I think maybe I mentioned in a couple of videos, I'm not exactly sure, that I started reading nonfiction, which is great. And I had to put some of the other stuff I was reading down. I just started my first James Baldwin and Bell Hooks. I have another Bell Hooks book, but I had never picked it up to read it. And I just got, over the last like couple of weeks, I got, what's the book called? I don't remember the name of the book, but it's whatever her last published work was before she passed away. So I'm in the process of reading that along with this James Baldwin book, and in the midst of consuming those books, also taking in a lot of social media that is heavily focused on injustice, inequities, specifically directed at people who look like me. And it took me back to a really dark time in my own, personal history in my life, when I was in school and I was a history major, specifically studying African American history, and I wasn't reading like empowering books. I wasn't reading from Bell Hooks and, Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, and like I was reading a lot of very oppressive text. And I remember this past week, and specifically when I had therapy, I got emotional because it took me back to being on a predominantly white campus and not feeling like I belonged there, and hearing just constantly, this was like 20 years ago, being inundated with like racist comments. And at the time, people like weren't getting canceled like that for saying vile things, and lots of microaggressions that I didn't even know. I didn't know the term microaggression at the time. I didn't know what I was experiencing. I just knew that it made me feel, it didn't make me feel good. And it stuck with me. And that, coupled with reading about this like horrific time period in history and the foundation of this country that I live in being rooted in hatred, particularly, the hatred and like abuse of my ancestors. It was a lot. It was really draining emotionally. Plus at that time, my father had just passed away, so it was just, I had a triple whammy of just like grief and overwhelm. And I felt myself going back to that place this week where I'm like, dang, this world feels so awful. Not only is it burning in the earth, the people on the planet are like destroying the earth. And, I think this country that I live in has played a huge role in the destruction of the earth and the environment. And those feelings, also the feelings of acceptance and finally feeling like I belong in a place, but the place where I belong is also being attacked for things that are outside of my control. And people like me, are also being attacked for reasons outside of our control. And then the fear that that creates, and like it just being so overwhelming, all of it just being so overwhelming, and getting away from the moments that bring me joy in my life. So I had that, you know, revelation this week, and one of the things that my therapist said to me is that it sounded like, based on what I shared with her, because I also shared that there had been projects since I lost my job in January. There were passion projects that I had taken on that I really had not, I either, didn't even know that this was a project that I was going to take on, or there were things that I kept putting on the back burner because I couldn't justify working on them when I had someone else's work to do. I was not in the habit of allowing myself to just enjoy life for the sake of life being meant to be enjoyed. And so I would always put my soul's desires and passions on the back burner to accomplish whatever the goal was of my employer at the time, my university at the time. And one of the things that I had highlighted for her was that I was so proud of myself that in this time of unemployment, this is the most that I've ever read for pleasure. And I finished these two nonfiction books. One of the books I blew right through it because it was just so good, and I was so immersed in the story. And I read it over the course of 10 days, and I was so proud of myself for allowing myself the space to just get lost in this book, and not using the excuse that I had used so many other times of like, well, I have something else that I should be doing. Because another thing that I'm grappling with in this current stage of my life is disassociating myself with the need to be productive. Like, my inherent worth and value is not tied to my productivity. And then that kind of ties back to this capitalistic mindset where which takes me back to college, where I was so immersed in this history of like black bodies being profitable, and how I'm now in 2026 really having to plant my feet firmly in the ground and accept a new reality for myself, and understand that a lot of this is one thing my therapist shared. It was like, when I told her about the education, and like I got very weepy as I was talking about it, because I told her it was just really hard stuff to learn about every day in class, and then have to also be out in the world and experience the watered down versions of those inequities, in the current day that I was living when I was a student on campus. And how I wasn't reading these empowering, works from black authors. And she was like, that is the colonizer's education. And I never heard it phrased that way. And I think that's true. I think that's true in many ways. And coming back to my current self in 2026, also having to dismantle my own belief system that I don't think I realized was like my operant power. Like, my operating system has been rooted in these capitalistic colonizer principles, and it is really unhealthy, and it keeps me in this constant state of fear. And over this last 6 or 7 months, since I have not had a job and I have been void of an overseer, honestly, I've been doing a ton of thinking about what I want my next stage in life to look like, what I want my next what I want the next iteration of my life to look like. I was saying like the next chapter, but like the next book in this saga of my life. What do I want it to look like? And I don't want to replicate this colonizer's mindset of what my life is supposed to look like based on my worth as an individual. And it brought me to this theme of knowing when to it brought me to this theme of allowing myself to mourn the reality of the life I've always known. And yeah, so one of the other things I was telling my therapist I have been doing, in addition to just like reading for pleasure, reading nonfiction for pleasure, allowing myself to get lost in these books, has been like cleaning out my whole house. And how some of the projects that I have been putting on the back burner over this period of unemployment, I've finally been allowing myself to work on those things. And over the last couple of weeks, honestly, probably since mid-June, I would say late June to like, where we currently are in mid-July, I felt like something happened where the brakes were pumped, and I haven't been able to move forward with a lot of those projects that I have been working on. There have been like maybe 2 or 3 large things that I've been working towards. Mentally I haven't been in the right headspace to like move forward with making progress on those things that I have been working on. And I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was just like losing steam, losing motivation. And that was a little discouraging for me because I had finally felt like, okay, I don't have work in my way to distract me from working on these projects, these creative ventures that I have been wanting to do for so long. So let me finally do it. Then I start doing it. I get some momentum. And then I feel like I am being held back. Like I feel like the motivation to do those things has just left my body, and my attention is supposed to be elsewhere. But at the time being like, I don't know, last week, I was trying to figure out like, well, what else am I supposed to be paying attention to right now? But I also have been feeling this big urge to like clear out my space. And last weekend, I think it was last weekend, I was finally able to clear out this closet that I've been meaning to clear out for months, literal months. I bought these like shelves that I needed to assemble as my linen closet, and I knew I had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to throw out, like old cosmetics and body products and hair products and stuff that I have no intention of using or haven't used it for a long time and was probably expired. I wanted to clean that space out and just like organize it so that I knew what I had and I could just see things. I get really overwhelmed with like visual clutter, and I have been trying to do my best in eliminating visual clutter from my home. And there's clutter around me that you can't see, but I have it in a stage right now where when it's time for me to clear out this room, I'll do that. But I needed to start in that linen closet. I really need to start in that linen closet. The next space that I'm going to tackle, which will probably start today into this weekend, will be my bedrooms. I have two bedroom closets that I need to clear out. I also bought a shelving unit for those. So I'm going to just be decluttering clothes that don't fit and things that are representative of the old version of me and not this new version of me and not the version of me that I'm stepping into in this next phase of my life. And I've already started to get rid of some things, like some of my comfort clothes that I wore during the COVID era. I had to box those up so that I could donate them because I just don't resonate with them. First off, some of them don't fit anymore. And, second of all, there were just some pieces that I didn't connect with. And so as I'm talking to my therapist about, trying to manage these feelings of this motivation that I've lost, and not like assuming any guilt for that, and not assuming guilt for the fact that like I've told myself too that while I'm looking for jobs and stuff, I'm not really seeing anything, but I want to take the rest of the summer for myself. And that's what, like August and September pretty much. I want to enjoy the rest of my summer unemployed and continue to work on my projects and then pick up the job search again at the end of the summer. And, if I'm supposed to go back to somebody else's job, then like hopefully I'll find something by that point. But I just haven't I've just felt like I've been in this period of just stillness, and the stillness I was equating to a lack of motivation. And then she said, it sounds like you are coming to terms with your current reality, and not only your reality but the reality that you live in. And because I had mentioned that I was going through like this mourning process of like kind of like, dang, this world really is trash. And like history told me, but I kept trying to patch it up and make it less garbage than it actually is. And like two things can be true at once, right? But the way she put it was like the outside always matches the inside, and you were called to take a rest from these projects because you needed to declutter and purge and clean your home. And you hadn't been able to do that for some reason in the past. And now, at the same time that you're having all these revelations about your inherent value and productivity being linked to your inherent value and worth, and you're purging your system of those beliefs, you are also like simultaneously purging your home to get rid of clutter that's no longer serving you. And so it made a lot of sense when she said it that way. And I can see it like, yeah, because I'm telling you, this linen closet I have been trying to clean for months. 4 months, even before, and I say for months because I think at the beginning of the year was when I got the, honestly, it might have been in December when I got the shelving unit, or like the shelving systems to put in this closet. And I put these little shelves together, and I don't know what it was. I just felt like I just didn't feel like doing it. And now I know that it wasn't the time for me to do that, but I knew that it needed to happen. And so now I've finally been able to clean that closet out, and it looks really nice. Everything is organized. And there are still some things that I want to go through, still some like products and things that I want to go through and eliminate, but it's like night and day to where it was. There was stuff all over the floor. Everything is like categorized now and like perfectly just in order. It's all in order. It doesn't look visually chaotic when I open that closet. And as I'm going through this stage and this journey in my life, I can see that in myself too, where it's like, I thought that my life was supposed to look like one thing. And the truth is, when I was in my last job, I was really, really struggling. My mental health was so bad, probably the worst it's ever been in my entire life. The worst it's ever been in my entire life. And it scared me because I just didn't feel like myself. I didn't even remember how I was supposed to feel because I was so used to like being mentally assaulted by people at work. And it was just the weirdest, like that's a weird thing. It feels weird for me to even say that, but that's how I felt. And so now I'm in this space of realizing that I don't have to willingly be anybody's product. I don't have to sell myself to the highest bidder when it comes to work, and I can dismantle I can dismantle the system of oppression that I've been indoctrinated into by doing something differently and being very intentional with how I use my time during this down period, but also how I choose to use my time moving forward when it comes to how I make a living. There's no rule book that says that the way I make my living has to be what I've done for the past however many years, and that it has to look like the same structure of what I've done. Like, I don't have to do that. And I have seen other people forge their own path. And I think part of the thing that has been scary about it all, which I'm also working to dismantle, this idea that something new is scary when the status quo has literally made me feel like I was being, eaten from the inside out. I don't have to fear the unknown, because I can know that the unknown may be better than everything that I've ever experienced. And it takes me deciding not to be led by fear to know that and to believe that. And so I have to now, instead of going back to that traumatic history, that colonizer's history of what my ancestors went through, I need to start getting deeper into the history of the innovators. And that's one thing my therapist encouraged me to do, and she shared some books with me, and to really dive deep into those encouraging stories and leave the oppression alone for a little bit because that has really put me exactly where the colonizer wanted me, honestly, and I don't want to be there. And so I gotta open my mind to like taking in new history, because that history exists. I just wasn't exposed to it as much as I was to the oppressive, traumatic history. So I'm excited. I'm gonna take a break for a little while with the nonfiction. I just picked up. This is a book. This is not the book I'm reading, but it's the same. Whatever the part one, I think it's called Real. I just started that last night, and it's pretty good so far. I'm only like a couple chapters in, but it's grabbed my attention, so I'm hoping that I'll be done with that relatively quickly, and then I'll read that one because that's like the second part. And then, as I feel called to, I will start to integrate more empowering historical Black figures into my reading, so that I can know that people, my foremothers and forefathers and ancestors were able to beat the system in their own way, and it worked for them, and it can work for me. And that is the history that I want to repeat itself, not this like oppressive trauma Olympics history, because that's where I've been so I've just been there, and I need to forge my own path, and I need to use a different text as my history, as I look for a blueprint of sorts. So yeah, that's it. This video is for whoever it is for. I just really felt like I needed to share this message. It was definitely something that was a revelation for me this week. The piece about the history that I was consuming, and like I just left this whole other innovative, creative pot of people on the table that I hadn't even been acknowledging. And then this idea that like settling in myself and trust in myself to know what the next right step is in this journey of my life, in my professional trajectory, whatever that's going to look like moving forward. It's okay. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel fear, because that is rooted in the unknown. And just because I don't know what's next doesn't mean that what is next is going to be nearly as horrible as what was. So yeah. I also pulled a muscle. I think I did something with one of my ribs. One of my ribs just keeps popping out. I don't know. And it makes it difficult for me to take like deep breaths. And it happened last night when I was trying to get out of bed. And so I have this this heating pad on my back right now. I slept on it a little bit, and that helped a lot. So I'm trying to take it easy. This is another thing I want to end this video, because I didn't want it to be over 30 minutes. But just really quickly, if you're still here receiving this message, my body has also been telling me to slow down in ways that I would prefer it be a little bit more gentle. But I also think that I've just been ignoring the messages. And so now it's just like, oh, there's a rib, slow down. But that's another video. Maybe I'll talk about that in the next video. But yeah, if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. I hope this message found who it was supposed to find, and I'll see you in the next one.